Welcome to the United Pubcast and the Friday Night Pint. Larry, it has been a long week, not just for us, but for Manchester United. So I have grabbed a drink. I know you do too. If you are in the live chat, please do grab a drink also. Sit back and look the week that was at Manchester United and the weekend that is, because an eventful week here. We are a week ago beating Manchester City on cloud nine. A couple of days later, not an unfortunate result, one of those things that happened at Selhurst Park. And ultimately now we look ahead to, I don't know, is it the game of the season or the biggest game of the season? I'm not sure. We've got Liverpool coming up in a few weeks, I assume. We still haven't played Leeds. That's always a big game for me. We just had the Manchester derby, which some people might say that. But talk to me ahead of this Arsenal match. Am I right in suggesting it's the biggest game of the season?
In the context of the season so far, it has to be. But I feel like you've asked me that question before during this season, and I've given you the same answer this season. But look, I mean, in traditional years gone by in the last decade, this hasn't been a big game. But forgetting the result or the disappointment of Crystal Palace, I think we need to contextualize. It was a disappointment because Ten Hag got us believing again. And because of that, United are still in a title race. And it doesn't change the fact if we beat Arsenal on Monday morning, we're right up there.
God, you just reminded me Monday morning for all Australian listeners. Unfortunately, the kickoff is 3:30 on a Monday morning, which is a tricky one. I haven't had one of those for a while. I don't think maybe this is the first one post-World Cup. It feels like it has been a while, but we will all be up for that one. Make sure you do stay tuned. We'll either be live immediately after full time, first thing Monday morning, or potentially Monday night as well after a long day at work. Fingers crossed it is a productive day after a productive result. But all right, before we get into everything, let's say good day to people in the live chat. Matt, good to see you as always. Hope all is well. Ashby on a Friday as well. Steve, good to see you from the Supporters Club. Sully as well. Good evening, fellas. Pump for Arsenal Monday morning. And Justin as well from the Supporters Club. Hope all are well. So I want to get in a little bit of discussion regarding the old days. You talked Arsenal and title race. That was my childhood. Arsenal and title races in Manchester United. Now, are we in that situation? I'm not sure. But we'll sort of discuss some sort of past memories and sort of better days, throwing back to those glory days a little bit later in the chat. But we will address the match in front of us at the moment. That is this our trip to the Emirates. Are you the fan base, in my opinion, is over-egging this Casemiro thing? Yes, I'd prefer Casemiro to play. I think he's potentially our best player. I want him in that midfield. He's not going to be in that midfield. But the reaction I've heard from both fans and the media and Arsenal fans as well, it's like we're going to start the match with 7 men. Like, okay, yeah, Casemiro is important, but it's not an absolute disaster. We're just going to throw in the towel. We can't win because Casemiro's not there. Yeah, it's a bit disappointing, but I'm sure Arsenal are going, oh, geez, I'd rather have Gabriel Jesus up front than Eddie Nketiah. I think it's one of those things that you can make a case for a Man United fan. So look, I'd rather Diogo Dalot than Aaron Wan-Bissaka. Like, these things, Casemiro is important. It's not the end of the world for me.
Yeah, I agree 100%. It's one of those things, Tom, where the modern fan is so extreme, one way or the other. We lost against Crystal Palace. It's a disaster. It's a disappointment. It's going to kill our momentum. It's going to kill our season. If Casemiro gets a yellow card, obviously. Oh, well, he's our best player. How can United ever... It's as if we never won a football game without Casemiro before. Let's just rewind back to September. Manchester United versus Arsenal. Arsenal, top of the league. Manchester United coming in with some winning form, but inconsistent so far, given the mixed start to the season. McTominay and Eriksen start in the midfield. Martial was injured. Rashford scored the goals. Arsenal dominated, granted, but Ten Hag set up United to get a result against Arsenal, and we were clinical, and we won 3-1 that day. If we've done it before, we can do it again. And I would argue that United are a much better football team now than the one that first Arsenal at Old Trafford this season.
Oh, no, definitely. And I would make the case, I'm sure Arsenal fans would make the case that Arsenal are a lot better as well. And they obviously played that game with Gabriel Jesus as well. And I remember that game, Arsenal were very good in that match, but ultimately they were the better football team. But I go back and I think Manchester United deserved to win, almost like last week with Manchester City. Manchester City were the better team. You just look at the stats. Ultimately, I still think Man United deserved to win. Now, yes, obviously got lucky with the goal, that first offside goal, but that doesn't dictate who wins. I remember the last game last season at the Emirates, Man United against Arsenal. From memory, someone correct me in the chat, but from memory, we battered them. We were really good on the day, but we had a missed penalty by Bruno Fernandes, and I think Ronaldo got a goal, but Arsenal was shocking on the day. Arsenal walked away with a 3-1 win. So these things happen in football. It'll come up on who turns up on the day. Manchester United need to bounce back. I back Erik Ten Hag. I've always been impressed with how he sort of deals with disappointment and how he sort of not fixes the mentality, but how he gets them back on track. So a comment here a little bit earlier from Matt saying Ten Hag cracked the whip on this squad, expecting a good result. When we do have these blips, we do bounce back. So that is a positive trait, something we can look forward to. And something I always look to, Larry, is what I've been saying. It's maybe the pessimist in me in regards to Manchester United, saying this winning run, I'm enjoying it. But the thing I don't like about a winning run is we're close to our next loss. Now, our next non-victory was Crystal Palace. Fingers crossed we can go on another winning run. It feels like Arsenal haven't lost in 2 years. Arsenal have got to lose eventually. And in one team they wouldn't want to play, they definitely don't want to be playing Man United.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're the side that troubles Arsenal the most. Probably because if you're Arsenal, you can look down the ladder. But I think, look, the biggest game for the top clubs at the moment is Manchester City. I think when you're United, you're Arsenal, you're Liverpool, Manchester City is the one you're circling on the calendar because that's the game that we got to be up for. Because just simply look at the players they have. Phenomenal squad and a world-class starting 11. But if you're Arsenal, now I think obviously naturally we have a Manchester United lens. I think it's really important to, like you say, put ourselves in Arsenal players' shoes. I think this is a game that could easily be complacent for. I think maybe Casemiro being out might actually play into United's hand a little bit.
Yeah, no, there's always, I played those scenarios in my mind. Is that just me trying to be hopeful? But I've definitely had that thought. It's common here from Box in saying, did you think the players felt the same when Casemiro's, did they lose their heads? When Casemiro, that happened, because all us fans is, oh my God, we're going to miss him for the Arsenal match. So all us fans had that. Yeah, even saw Eric Ten Hag on the sideline sort of shake his head. Do you put that down to the late equaliser, or the late equaliser was just one of those things that was going to happen with Casemiro on the pitch? Or do you think the players maybe sort of feel like us fans feel? I hope they don't, but they're only natural. They obviously know Casemiro is a good player. Do you think they almost felt what us fans felt?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question, and it's a difficult one to answer. Ultimately, only the players who are on the pitch could answer that question with 100% accuracy. But from my perspective, I don't think so. Palace was starting to get into the ascendancy well before Casemiro went off. Because if you compare it to the first half, I thought United really had control of the football game. It was probably around the 50th, 60th minute where I actually felt like Palace were getting on top. It's easy to say in hindsight because we didn't get the result. Ultimately, Crystal Palace drew the game with a free kick. Now, if that free kick wasn't hit as brilliantly, we're talking about a 1-0 victory to Manchester United. And then we're not asking these questions. So I think we just simply need to put it down to, you know what, it was a poor free kick to give away, world-class free kick. The goalkeeper couldn't do anything about it. United could have taken their chances. On another day, we get a penalty. On another day, we score another goal. That's just football.
Yeah, no, definitely hard to argue. Munzie here, good to see you, mate. Haven't seen you in here for a while now on the Sports Capital. I think Martinez and Fred will start in midfield. There's another comment in regard to the starting 11 box here saying De Gea, Wan-Bissaka, Varane and Shaw, Fred, Eriksen, Fernandes, Rashford. In regards to his 8 likely starters, not sure about the other 3. I think all those names are definitely in. It'll be interesting in regards, especially those wide men. But in midfield, Larry, in regards to a lot of people are calling Lisandro Martinez, and look, I do understand the argument. A lot of people say he did play there on occasions for Ajax. We do look at potential limitations that Scott McTominay and Fred bring when played in that role. So I do see the sort of urgency and the desire to try something different that's not Fred and McTominay. I don't see it. Now, Eric Ten Hag got trial curveball to 2:30 on Monday morning for us when we do wake up and check the team news. I would be shocked if Lisandro Martinez is in midfield. I think we go back to our strongest back four. Now, some people would say Luke Shaw is part of our strongest back four in the middle. I think it'll be Martinez on the left-hand side of defence with Varane and Luke Shaw back at fullback. But just your thoughts in regards to Martinez in midfield.
I agree with you, but what I will say is when Luke Shaw played centre-back, I bet you never thought you'd see that this season. So never say never with Eric Ten Hag.
I've seen Luke Shaw maybe in a 3. I saw him in a 3 under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer play at the back. But I think left back into... I've just never seen Martinez. I know he has featured there for Ajax. I've just never seen him in there. Now, the attributes he has, you think, yeah, could probably do a job there. But I also look at Arsenal potential. No matter who's in midfield, they might dominate that area of the pitch anyway, because that's where one of their strong points have been this season. Even if we had Casemiro, you put Casemiro and Martinez and Fred in there, maybe Arsenal still play around that potentially. So I'm just thinking, ultimately, if they're in midfield and they've got the ball, okay, we'll need to sort of protect that back line, and that could be needing Lisandro Martinez at the back, because it's one of those things, you weigh these players up man for man, and I said the other day, Martinelli against Aaron Wan-Bissaka. On their day, Martinelli could get the better of him, but on Aaron Wan-Bissaka's day, Aaron Wan-Bissaka will put him in his pocket. Luke Shaw and Saka on the other side. Saka on his day could have a field day. Luke Shaw on his day, Bukayo Saka won't get a kick. Then ultimately you move in that centre forward position. If it's Rafael Varane and Lisandro Martinez against Eddie Nketiah, Varane and Martinez is going to have an off day, and Eddie Nketiah is going to have a good day. So I'm just thinking, man for man at the back, I think we're quite sort of solid.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually think Arsenal are the most interesting side this season, and I mean that with full respect. I look at their team on paper, and I can't for the life of me tell you how they're coming first. I really
Yeah.
can't. And again, they obviously deserve where they deserve to be, and that's why they sit at the top
It's
of the
their
Premier League
stability.
table.
It's their stability. It's what we can look with Eric Ten Hag. To give him time if he goes through a bad patch. Give him time. You look at the bad patch Arteta went through. Now he's still there, and it's been consistent. It's been stability, and that is why they're clear at top. They deserve to. I do look at on paper as well. I do look at the names you do mention there, Larry. And yes, how are they top? But I almost look at Leicester. When Leicester were top, it was because everything else was sort of chaotic around them. Chelsea were all over the place. Will was shocking. City and Liverpool weren't quite at it. Arsenal were the closest challengers. And I look at Arsenal now, and they're just smooth sailing. There's just nothing wrong at the club at the moment. It's all nice and stable, consistent, and everywhere else there's problems. Pep Guardiola's calling out the Man City fans. Is Haaland sort of maybe taken away from the way they play football? We're coming from a position of absolute chaos last season. Liverpool are a shambles. Chelsea, which we'll get into in a little bit. There's all these sort of circus cases around the clubs at the moment. Arsenal are just the one that just doing their job. And I think that is why they're top.
Yeah, I actually thought they'd fall away with Gabriel Jesus injured, but obviously they've managed to maintain their position. It's interesting, on Manchester City, and I know this obviously isn't a Manchester City channel or preview, but Haaland impacting the way they play, I think there's something in that. If you even look at the way United set up, quite deep, they almost double marked him with Varane and Luke Shaw. And the thing with Haaland is, like I said, I think is a big Chicharito and a more clinical version of Chicharito. What did Chicharito do well? He ran in behind. Now, if there's no space to run in behind, well, Haaland's not that effective. You and I have come on here before and said, you know what? As a footballer, he's not that brilliant. And this is when he was banging in more goals than games. We came on here and we said, footballing ability, it's actually not much of him. But in terms of putting the ball at the back of the net, world class. You can't debate that. We saw that there's not a lot of football to him. In the Manchester derby, he was anonymous. If he wasn't shooting, he was doing nothing.
Do you think looking back now, and if he goes score a few more goals and it becomes a top goal scorer and Manchester City win the title, of course he'll get player of the season. If the season continues as is now and he keeps popping in a few goals, but Arsenal win the title, is Erling Haaland not going to win player of the season? Because that was an impossible discussion a few weeks ago. Erling Haaland had that wrapped up. He had every award wrapped up. But ultimately now in regards to potential sort of looking into the future and seeing the not limitations in Erling Haaland, but it's not all plain sailing, that someone else could win player of the season?
Yeah, it's a good question. I would probably say, and I hate to praise an Arsenal player, I got to say Odegaard. He's the one who's impressed me this season. Every time I've seen Arsenal play, I mean, he's been good. Like, don't get me wrong, but I've seen Arsenal fans on his back in previous seasons. When did he sign? 2 seasons ago?
I think he came in on loan. He came in on loan for a bit in January, and they signed him in the summer, I think.
I think it was January 2021 from memory. So he hasn't been there a very long time, but this season he's broken into that world-class bracket. There's definitely a conversation to be had there. If Arsenal manage to win the title, I think Odegaard's a shoo-in for player of the year. I think he's been phenomenal.
In the live chat, do let us know who your player of the season is. Please make it a Manchester United player, but if not, feel free to give your Arsenal or City or whoever. Obviously, no one from Chelsea. They have absolute shambles of a season. But I've seen a few comments in regards to Anthony Martial and Weghorst. We'll get into the number 9 position. But just in regards to, we'll discussing Arsenal's midfield there, Larry, and a potential strength, well, obvious strengths they have. And we're obviously losing our best midfielder in Casemiro. Again, we said Fred, McTominay and Eriksen in midfield, and that pushes Bruno Fernandes to the right. If we're going along those lines of thinking, smart money would say that is going to be the case. How do you line up that midfield? Is it Fred and McTominay as two people sitting and Eriksen further forward? Or is there a situation where Erik ten Hag places Fred in the number 10, but not 10 as in a creative number 10, but more a defensive, let's say, as you can see from the thumbnail, trying to stop Thomas Partey, who's obviously had a very good season, in the number 6 role. So let's say it's Eriksen, Fred and McTominay. How are you shaping up that midfield trio?
Yeah, it's I've ummed about this a little bit, and I'm split between playing Bruno on the right because obviously he was so effective against Manchester City doing it. But the other side of me thinks, do you look at Arsenal's weaknesses and where we could exploit them? And if I'm being honest, if I look at, they've got Ben White playing right back. Now, I think Ben White and Rashford, that's a no-brainer. You want to put Rashford on him all day long and look to get him in behind. But let's look on the other side. Zinchenko, he was actually the one who got sucked in for Anthony to score on debut. And I think, you would probably want a player who can get at Zinchenko. I think you want someone with a bit of pace so he can get sucked in a little bit. So I would be tempted to start Antony. I know his form does raise eyebrows, but that's probably the way I would want to go. I think
Now, this is... Look, I like to agree there. That is what I wouldn't be betting on it, but I like that line of thinking. And now this won't happen, but we'll just throw up the scenario because who knows what Eric Ten Hag will throw us. Box here. Sancho hasn't had a few minutes, but on the right wing, we've got a decent player in Jadon Sancho. Real curveball by Eric Ten Hag, or you just want to rule this out? There's no chance of this happening.
Oh, there's absolutely a chance of this happening. And the thing with Sancho is he's a playmaker. He's not what you'd call your modern day winger, for lack of a better term. He's not an Antony. I think he's a playmaker. And the thing with Sancho in the side is you're adding another player who can give a ball to Rashford, can offer a long ball. But crucially with Sancho, when he's on, he can absolutely give fullbacks headaches because he knows how to get on the ball. But let me ask you this. You expect Arsenal to dominate the ball, I'm assuming. So if that's the case, do you opt for a Sancho or do you go for someone who's probably a little more pacey in an Antony, for example, or even Garnacho?
I think Garnacho is a shout-out. Well, sort of nicely alludes into my next point in regards to this is obviously recorded before Eric Ten Hag's press conference, so we don't know what he's going to say about Anthony Martial. He might declare Martial fit. That doesn't mean he's going to be fit come Sunday. Who knows what can happen there? He could be injured getting on the bus. But let's go under the assumption that Martial doesn't play. I think there is a very strong situation where Weghorst doesn't start either. I think it'd be Rashford through the middle, Anthony or Bruno, flip a coin, and Garnacho gets the start on left. Obviously, a big pitch. I think Garnacho could sort of isolate himself against Ben White if the game goes in our favour. So let's just say, what are you thinking in regards to the Martial situation? Do you have a hunch that he will be fit and available, or is your gut telling you that we're going to have to look for a different solution?
I think Martial will be fit, and I think he starts. I came on here now, match review. I have my opinions. Others might disagree with me. That's completely fine. I'm sticking to my guns. I think Martial's a much better striker than Weghorst, with all due respect. Not scoring goals, granted. I think if you want to look to get Arsenal on the counter, you want someone who's good with the ball at their feet, and Anthony Martial's that player.
Oh, yeah, no, it's no debate for me in regards to the quality of player. Ultimately, in terms of the situation we find ourselves in, though, the problem Eric Ten Hag and Martial has had, it's not too much in the way we're playing result-wise, but ultimately you can't keep winning games 1-0. You do need a few more goals, and Manchester United sort of have lacked in that goals there. And maybe not so much post-World Cup, but there is going to have to come a time where Martial is going to have to maybe knock one or two notches off his performance and pay the price of scoring a few more goals. Time will tell if that's the case. Fingers crossed he's fit, but this is obviously recorded before Eric Ten Hag's press conference, giving a fitness update. Look, we're not going to lose any sleep over if Weghorst starts or Rashford through the middle. But ultimately, yeah, I do think we need our best players. And whatever you think of him at the moment in regards to the collective, Anthony Martial is part of that. He's going to have to score eventually. Like Arsenal, going to have to lose eventually. Martial's going to have to score a goal eventually. So fingers crossed those two things do occur on Sunday now. Larry, score predictions in regards to this. I'm quietly confident. Now, I know I shouldn't be. I know we should have Casemiro. That's not the case. I know going away to Arsenal is not, even when we're flying, it's a tough game where you sort of can't guarantee on 3 points, of course. I just think it maybe not written in the stars, but I do just a good feeling. Arsenal have to lose eventually. And Manchester United, I do like the way we bounce back under Eric Ten Hag. And yeah, I'm going 1-0 Man United. And usually I'd pick a draw in this, but I can see us getting a win. I can also see us getting smashed, but I'll go 1-0 United.
I don't think we'll get smashed. Our defense has been so good this season, but I got to say that the defense has been so good with Casemiro in the team. And as much as I think we can win this game without Casemiro, I wonder whether these players believe they're capable of getting a result without the Brazilian. And again, if you're Ten Hag, your speech has to start with, hey guys, you see that team that is in the other locker room? We beat them this season without Casemiro. Let's do it again.
That's what I think he's the main man. Or we're talking about Fred and McTominay and Ericsson or Garnacho. The main man for this, I don't like this because players need to take responsibility on the pitch. They're the one who wins games. Tactics don't win games. Men win games. It comes down to Eric Ten Hag for me. If he can get these right into players' heads and sort of come up with a plan. I think I was listening to an Arsenal podcast earlier, and it was a really good point in regards to Arsenal's bench. It got a really good start in 11.
What time did you start drinking and do that?
Yeah, no, exactly. I live a strange life. But they were talking about they can't really change things off the bench in terms of, okay, they got Eddie and Nketiah. He's starting. He was plan A off the bench. So if this game is 0-0 at halftime, 0-0 after 60, how are they going to change it? If it's 0-0 after 60, how can Manchester United change it? Or you can bring Weghorst, he's something different. You bring Anthony if Bruno's on the right. Well, we've got one or two things we can change. Jadon Sancho could be a bit of an X factor. Who is Arsenal bringing off the bench if it's 0-0? So if Man United can go in with a plan like Erik ten Hag did the first half against Manchester City and stifle them of all created chances and stop a team creating chances against us, the longer this goes 0-0, I think it does favour United, and that's why I'm potentially looking at Stephen agreeing with me here, 1-0 United. So just your thoughts in regards to what we criticise this squad in regards to its depth. But if you look at the team at the top of the table, we'll probably have better depth.
Yeah, we do, but they get in the better results, which again is so interesting, And I mean, look, the one, call him an X factor for lack of a better term, they do have Smith Rowe off the bench. Now, Smith Rowe obviously has been replaced. Smith Rowe is a good player, I think rival fan bases get a bit extreme one way or the other. When analysing opposition sides, I like to keep it sensible sometimes, except when I'm talking about the Frenchman, you know who I'm talking about. And look, I think Smith Rowe is a good player, very much in the Jack Grealish mold, and can offer that something different off the bench. But no, I agree with you. I think United do have more ties to their bow, and because of that, it should be enough. What I will say is, like with the Manchester City game, I will maintain, I think without Casemiro, which is a massive loss, if United go behind, can they come back? I don't know.
I say no, but I said no against Manchester City. I said during the match, I said if City score here, it's game over. And Manchester United, the players did surprise me. And yes, they did come with a huge stroke of luck in regards to the offside goal. And if that doesn't happen, we don't come back, and we're having a discussion about the players' mentality. So it is a funny old game. But I'll ask you the question, Larry, and the people in the live chat, before we do move on to a few other topics. Key man, I think it's Fred. I think from a defensive side of things, if we're going to have a good day, he's going to have to pocket someone. I don't know if that's Odegaard, I don't know if that's Xhaka, I don't know if it's Partey, but I think Fred is going to be the key for this. And here I am as someone who's sort of been highly critical of Fred over the years. I think in the way this game is going to play out in terms of their strengths and our weaknesses and our strengths and their weaknesses, I think it really lies on the Brazilian.
Can I say rightfully critical, though? Let's not rewrite history.
Look, I love Fred. He frustrates me.
It's frustrating, though, Kenny. Like, you know what? He's the one player I think that's been overshadowed this season in terms of players that have improved under Ten Hag. The obvious one is Marcus Rashford. Outside of that, you're obviously talking about Diogo Dalot, Aaron Wan-Bissaka more recently, Luke Shaw. Never saw this player. But I think Fred's improved massively.
I think post-World Cup, I remember here we are, McTominay and Fred. McTominay was much better pre-World Cup. Fred's been much better post-World Cup. Now, is that a fitness thing? Is that Fred continuing on from playing for Brazil and sort of having that football and McTominay had a month off? I'm not sure. But this is not me defending McTominay, but sort of rewriting history. Let's not forget what the situation was before the World Cup.
Yeah, look, you're right. But you know what? I think we saw it even under Ralph Rangnick. When Fred is allowed to play further forward, when he's not being told to do a back to goal, number 6 in the hole, when he's not being told to do that, there's a player there. And there's a guy with good energy. And like we saw, again, Manchester City, Garnacho gives the assist to Rashford. It was Fred who puts the ball in for Garnacho. Perfectly placed, good power. He ran around. He covered every blade of grass, Fred, in the Manchester derby. When he's given a job to do, I think he can really nail it. And I can understand why, if you're a football manager, you're a fan of the Brazilian. That's all Ten Hag's got to do. If you keep Fred's job simple, I think he can absolutely be pivotal. And you're right, Tom. He will be pivotal. If Fred doesn't have a good game, or even better yet, if Fred doesn't start, I think United will rue that decision. I really do.
Yeah, no, it's definitely hard to argue. Matt here, Fred will tear you apart again. That song has come out a few times in regards to the old Ryan Giggs chant, which I am a fan of.
I have to ask you a question. Let me ask you a question. You're obviously not a McTominay apologist, but you have been quite vocal in defending the Scotsman time and time again. And I do have to ask you this question because there are people, you're almost growing a little bit of a fan base who like to attack you for being a McTominay fan. So let me ask you this question. You said at the start of the season, McTominay over Fred all day long. If you got to sell one of those players, you're selling Fred. Is your position still the same right now?
Yeah, no, it would stay the same. And again, that's not to be critical of Fred or me demanding Fred is sold. I'm just thinking if it's one or the other, and I look at the situation, I look at a homegrown player who cares for the club, is potentially more happy to sit on the bench But now that's not a desire. That's not what we should be looking for. But if I'm having to weigh up the two, Fred and McTominay should be squad players for Manchester United. They shouldn't be starting for Manchester United. We should have players like Casemiro, Bruno Fernandes, and Eriksen. So I look at a squad player, what comes off the bench, and I do look at what values and what traits you do need from them. And I do, and it's a very close thing at the moment. There are sort of things Fred has to his game that McTominay doesn't, but there's things McTominay has to his game that Fred doesn't. And I just look at in terms of potential value. If a club's like PSG is to come in for Fred, okay, you could maybe ship him off there for a bit of money. Do we go and strengthen a rival in Newcastle by giving them Scott McTominay? Probably not. I don't see Scott McTominay going elsewhere. I think he would go to a sort of a Premier League rival.
Case in point there. Why is Fred linked with PSG and McTominay is linked with Newcastle? Does that not tell you where each player sits in terms of football ranking?
The English players, but besides the stars, I say English, he's obviously Scottish, but born in England. But Scott McTominay, the players like that, even to the heydays, well, Paul Scholes, was he linked with PSG or clubs like that? Like those people stay in Britain. Now, yes, there are the odd cases where Rashford's linked to PSG or Gascoigne goes to Italy or David Beckham goes to Spain, but very, very rarely the British players stay within Britain, and Brazilians, not often they go to England. Obviously, they're around the continent, France and Spain, etc., France, Italy. So, look, if someone wants to keep Fred over McTominay, it's a valid opinion, but just at the moment, in the way I see things, it's much of a muchness, and in my opinion, I prefer Scott McTominay. At the moment, Fred's contributing more, so I think Fred deserves to be playing more, but over the course of their time at United, in terms of 8 out of 10s to 2 out of 10s, I think Scott McTominay is sort of a little bit more balanced and a little bit more trustworthy, which we've seen through managers in regards to Jose Mourinho, Solskjaer, Rangnick. And at the start of this season, it was Erik ten Hag who was picking Scott McTominay over Fred. Now that's changed, and Fred is rightfully a sort of above him on the pecking order. But if I was given a choice now, I would. I'm not saying sell Fred. I'm saying if we had to, I would choose the Scotsman.
Can I tell you why I choose Fred? And I know I flip-flopped on this myself. Before anyone who's been watching us...
Tomorrow, if Fred puts this in the top corner and Scott McTominay gets a red card or something on the weekend, my opinion will change. But yeah,
let me tell you why I think Fred's overtaken McTominay by a substantial amount. One, I think it's very clear Ten Hag trusts Fred more. He's been playing him a lot more. Let's remember, McTominay was keeping Casemiro out of the side at the start of the season. Fred was playing on the left wing when he was coming on. So I think that shows you how hard Fred has worked to get back in favour. But the other thing is, just talking about what we were mentioning about 5 minutes ago, Fred used to be sitting in the six, bad first touch, would often put his own team under pressure, and we concede a goal. He stepped on De Gea's leg in an Arsenal match last season to lead to goals. You know what? You know why Fred makes all those mistakes, though? He doesn't shy away from the stuff. Even if he can't do it, even if he's not good at it, Fred never shies away. He doesn't hide. He whatever job he's asked to do, the Brazilian tries to do it to the best of his ability. Sometimes the best of his ability isn't great, but he never shies away from the job. And when you look at all the criticism he has copped over his United career, there's got to be something about him. The guy's got some character. So I've got to say, full credit to Fred. He's earned Erik ten Hag's trust, and he's earned my trust.
Yeah, no, look, Fred is that character, and everything you said there is right. And I think he is, no matter how frustrated and how bad, I don't want to say how bad, but how poor he can be at times, he's someone, as a fan, you do warm to. Whether you love or hate him, the football player, you do love the guy. I don't know if that's the sort of the infectious smile he has in terms of all these post pass to Fred and all that. I know us down in Melbourne came across him a few times, and you saw there was a genuine time and genuine interaction he had with all the fans down there. And stuff like that, you do warm to him, regardless of your opinion of him as a footballer. It is one of those things. So fingers crossed, as Fred is on the thumbnail, someone put in the chat earlier, surprised he's on the thumbnail. I'm hoping he's the key. And look, I'd love him to be the key. Wouldn't you love Fred 1-0 against Arsenal instead of a throwback? And that goes into my next point in regards to Arsenal and title races. In the live chat, let me know your thoughts, or let us know your thoughts on what your favourite Arsenal v Man United memory, in that sort of go back to the Ferguson Wenger days. What was your favourite Arsenal United memory? And I'll put in the chat and we'll discuss them. So I'll just throw the question to you first, Larry. Arsenal v Man United growing up. First memories or first moments that come to mind.
First memory that comes to mind is Pizzagate. That's probably the one that I was old enough to properly remember. Obviously, Roy Keane yelling in the tunnel, all that jazz. But what I would say is, probably because I was 18, 19 when this happened, the 8-2 at Old Trafford, that game stands out for me. Arsenal went on to finish in the top 4 that season. So, they weren't absolute rubbish. And United didn't win the league. But the way we toyed with them that game, it was unheard of. And for Manchester City, who have been, they can blow sides away. I've never seen Manchester City put 8 past the team in their dominance. So
I've seen Middlesbrough put 8 past City.
Well, there you go. But yeah,
who was striker for Arsenal that day?
Which game?
The 8-2.
Robin van Persie.
Robin van Persie scored a goal and missed a penalty. David De Gea. David De Gea saved the penalty. David De Gea saved the penalty, but he did score a goal. I think Walcott got the other one. Ashley Young was firing in. Nani scored a beautiful goal. Wayne Rooney hat-trick. I'm not often a player does Wayne Rooney scored too many hat-tricks. He did score a lot of goals.
A free kick, a goal,
2 free kicks.
And a penalty. Or was it 2 free kicks?
Did he miss the penalty or did he score the penalty?
No, he scored the penalty.
It might have been a hat-trick of set pieces. If you're in the live chat, did he miss that? I feel he maybe missed it, or he might have missed it the previous week.
No.
He did score a hat-trick, though.
He didn't miss.
I think he missed against Chelsea. He might have missed against Chelsea, either side of that, potentially.
Yeah, I think he hit the post.
But a few shouts in here. Sally, obviously a key moment of the semi-final goal, Ryan Giggs.
That's a hell of a shout box.
This one here, box there. Well, that's probably my favourite ever Premier League game. If you do have the chance to go back and watch Arsenal v United 4-2 at Highbury, had the tunnel, Patrick put Arsenal in the lead, which sort of added to that story. Obviously got Rooney versus Pires, Fletcher versus Pires, Roy Keane versus Vieira as well. Obviously Rooney, Ronaldo with the double, John O'Shea chip. Who scored the first one for United? Yeah, obviously Ryan Giggs after a Rooney layoff. One of the greatest Premier League games I've seen. You saw Gabriel Heinze giving it to Freddie Ljungberg. Silvestre got sent off with a headbutt on, I think it was Dennis Bergkamp or Ljungberg, I forget. It had absolutely everything. My favourite ever Premier League match. Arsenal, Manchester United 4-2 at Highbury. Absolutely brilliant. Matt here agreeing, Keane giving it to Vieira in the tunnel. My first memory, definitely not my first memory, but the memory that always comes to mind is a bad one. Ruud van Nistelrooy hitting the penalty off the crossbar against Arsenal in that yellow kit. Arsenal go on to have an invincible season after that.
Yeah, you're right. What's another one?
Sully here with the shout. I remember Sully went to this game. Robin van Persie scored on return, and when the Arsenal came to Old Trafford, he scored both games in that season. But he scored that was after a bad run. I think we're on a bad run under David Moyes. Arsenal came to town. United was in a bad spell. Robin van Persie stepped up and obviously celebrated, which was brilliant to see.
Yeah, he did the knee slide with Rooney, didn't he? That was a 2-0 victory from memory. And yeah, we were in some bad form under Moyes. And that's a very memorable game too, probably because our backs were to the wall a little bit. So it was nice to get one over us. It's really interesting, even when United have struggled, we've always managed to beat Arsenal. I can think back to Rashford's debut season, actually. Do you remember that side was ravished with injuries?
Oh, you go through that. I think, was it James Weir got a debut, came off the bench late on? I think Timothy Fosu-Mensah started, or it came off the bench.
Varela was playing right back.
I think, there was players all over the pitch. Obviously Marcus Rashford got the debut. I think Paddy McNair part of the team. I've heard names like that. Like, you go back and look at that team. Absolutely brilliant player. They had Louis van Gaal falling over doing the dive in the technical area.
Oh my gosh.
Was that Louis van Gaal's finest moment? Was that his finest moment?
Oh, absolutely. Oh, it's hilarious. Oh, I remember going on Twitter at the time and just the amount of memes. Oh, Louis.
Oh, they still pop up now.
If football matched his press conferences, we would have really been in for something. His press conferences were, oh my God. Can we go back and do a podcast on all the things Louis van Gaal said in press conferences? Talking about sex and hair pulling and doing dives on the touchline. Oh, he was brilliant.
He had it all. I remember the end of season, the Player of the Year awards. He was pissed with Ryan Giggs on stage. Well, Ryan Giggs wasn't, but Louis van Gaal was. And the speech he did, I think he talks to Wayne Rooney, part of the speech. You can find it on YouTube. If anyone wants, I'll send them a link if I can find it. One of the brilliant speeches by Louis van Gaal was on stage. He's had a few too many wines, but we'll start to sort of change pace a little bit. And obviously, Arsenal, Manchester United, the next sort of horse into that race when we were growing up was Chelsea. Chelsea aren't in that race at the moment. They're in a whole heap of a different race. I'm not sure what is happening at Chelsea. They just signed a guy today, 35 or the Fabrizio Romano has given the here we go. So you assume it's going to be finalised quite soon. Haven't heard of him. Plays for PSV, 35 million euro. And I'm just thinking, look, it might prove to be brilliant business. Chelsea in 2 years might benefit from this transfer window and they might go win a lot. Who knows? But for now, we can just laugh at the sheer what looks like stupidity.
How many players have they signed this season? Honestly, do we know? It has to be.
It's not my concern. A lot of people are using that concern as in towards financial fair play. How does it? And I fully share those. How many players have they got in their squad? Can they fit 25? Like, there has to be a limit. Like they're going to have players who not even making the match day squad who are on 300 grand a week.
Yeah, I don't know. It's forget financial fair play, like you said. Like if you're in that squad right now, you can't. Morale can't be good, and you're seeing
there's got to be deals to be made. Like Man United, go look who's on the outer at Chelsea. They're worth doing a quick deal at the end of January for.
I don't know. You know what? If there was one I could get Kante. Is he injured at the moment?
Kante there, I think he's actually got a poor injury record. Chris here a little bit earlier was talking about Alex Telles, now still on loan at Sevilla. I'm not sure how he's done at Sevilla. Obviously, don't watch La Liga too closely, but it's still our player, just on loan at the moment. I think he just had a little baby as well, so congratulations to him. But just on Chelsea, are we over-egging this and just sort of laughing at them because of their league position? Like, is it actually potentially a good business just sort of getting these players in now, or is it just what it looks like, an absolute basket case?
I think it could go one way or the other, and I don't mean to sound like Michael Owen here, obviously, but what I mean by that is that they're signing a lot of young players. So, I mean, if they get rid of a lot of the older players or the players toward the end of their career or past their peak, and they rely on building young players for the future, and if they're prepared, crucially, to allow for a season or two where they're not qualifying for Champions League, maybe it's Europa League, for example, if they're willing to ride that out for 2 years, like we've seen with Arsenal, for example, then it will look like a masterstroke in 2 years' time. However, I would counter that with, if you look at the squad they had at the start of the season, did they need all that? I mean, I think their transfer strategy has been so scattergun from start to finish. I mean, they signed Raheem Sterling this season. He's probably.
I forgot Sterling was there. I forgot he was there.
Yeah, case in point, because they've signed about 10 players since he was signed. And like, he's not an old player. How old's Raheem Sterling? 27? He's not old.
It must be close to 30. He's been around a while, but he did start quite young. But the big one as well, João Felix, and he's still suspended, obviously. And I just think that kind of summed up now. I know it's a short-term loan, but the money they spent on that look, that was obviously quoted to Man United.
Gosh, I forgot about that one.
But we're on here saying go get João Felix. But when you do look up, we criticise the Glazers for sort of the recruitment and the lack of investment over the years, or the lack of sort of correct investment. And we do look at that and we're critical, go get João Felix. But when you do sort of take a step back and look at it, you think, we're right to stay away from that João Felix deal.
I think he's got unbelievable ability, yeah? But you know what I don't like about him? Simeone obviously had it with him, but the thing with João Felix is the fact he didn't get on with Simeone tells me he didn't like running and he didn't like working hard. And I think what we've seen from Ten Hag, while the football's been entertaining, he has demanded his players work hard. And I think that if João Felix came to United, I don't know if we'd get that work rate out of him. So you have to say it was probably the right call. What I will caveat that with, Tom, I would love to put João Felix on one of the wings for the Arsenal match if I could.
Well, to be fair, in that, Chris brings it up here. He played well in that first 45 until he gets it on. He was brilliant in that first 45. Oh, geez, he's a player. Obviously, you did know his quality. When you saw him in the Premier League weight film, you thought, geez, he's got something. And then obviously, he also found he had a pair of studs as well. Michael here, good to see. Obviously, an Arsenal fan. Man United's going to lose to the mighty Arsenal 4-0. I highly doubt that. The last time I think Arsenal Man United was 4-0 was Nani. I was just looking for a photo. That's why when I was screen, I was looking for a photo I had signed by Nani. Darren Fletcher double. I think who else scored that game? It was the FA Cup back in 2008. Obviously, good memory. That's the last time I remember Man United 4-0 against Arsenal. But before we move on, Larry, there's a few other things I do want to touch on. Obviously, we touched on Chelsea there. Boxy bringing up Chelsea has spent all this money, plus we'll have to pay for Felix, plus Nkuku's coming in up next window as well.
Oh my gosh, Nkuku, I forgot about that one too. My gosh, they've spent some money, Chelsea.
I tell you who they're also going to have to spend money on, who I think will end up at Chelsea, Dean Henderson. I think they're going to have to address the goalkeeper issue. That's not working for them. They're going to need a new goalkeeper. I think United can sell. I think United will sell him to Chelsea.
That's crazy, I mean, Mendy is a Champions League winning goalkeeper. He's fallen well out of favor. And I forget the Spanish lad. What's his name?
Kepa. He's a nightmare. He's a circus.
Oh, yeah, he is a circus. He can be brilliant, but he just has brain farts every second game. I feel like every time I see Chelsea, he's making a mistake.
Yeah. Well, that's what the Chelsea fans say.
Yeah, Henderson's a good shout for Chelsea, actually.
Long may that continue their form, because it is good watching. Usually it's us in the mud and we're having other clubs laugh at us, but now we can laugh at Chelsea. So I think that is a positive thing here. It's a comment here. I think you're reading from DR Banks here. You guys don't fear God nowadays. How can a winning team from behind win the top winning team? Not quite sure what you mean there. Maybe Larry can dissect that.
Fuck knows.
Well, we'll go on to my last topic, and then if anything else in the live chat does tickle your fancy, you do want us to discuss, throw it in the comments, and Larry and I will chat as I finish my drink. But an ex-Manchester United player, Jesse Lingard, got speaking, and I actually quite enjoyed it. I thought it maybe carried on a little bit in regards to certain topics, but if anyone hasn't watched it yet, Jesse Lingard has done a podcast. The Diary of a CEO, David Moyes, was on there the other day. A good listen with that as well. Very interesting with his time at United. But Jesse Lingard has done one, speaks about his mental health issues off the field and obviously his mother, and then obviously the football side of things. Dropped one or two bit of, not bombshell stuff we know, but obviously it's always sort of interesting when you do hear it from someone who's actually experienced it behind the scenes, as Jesse Lingard has. But just what did you make of? I've watched the full interview, Larry. I think you've just seen the snippets. But first of all, what do you make of this in terms of David Moyes has come out under fire? His job's on the line. He's doing these podcasts, throwing everyone under the bus. So and Jesse Lingard's a current player doing these sort of honest sort of podcasts. First of all, your feelings towards that as players are contracted or managers are contract, but also what he has said in relation to Manchester United.
Yeah, it's interesting. I got a bit of a love-hate relationship with Jesse Lingard. Ultimately, I remember the FA Cup goal. If you score a winning goal in an FA Cup final, you got my respect, man.
No, not winning goal. Volley into the top corner in extra time with 10 men.
Well, yeah. And it was brilliant. But you know what? I still think there is this... There's something in the modern footballer where they just fail to take accountability for their actions. I don't like what he said about, I think he was talking about John Murtaugh. How John Murtaugh said, do you want a couple of days off? And he said, well, I'm just going to do it now. Like, you're taking the piss. Like, you know what I mean? And I think I saw, like, again, I need to get off Twitter, I swear. But I saw Twitter abusing John Murtaugh for doing that. Well, John Murtaugh acknowledged this guy's not getting the deal he wants. His head's probably gone a little bit. And he's offered to give him a couple of days off to help him just regroup. So what? There's nothing wrong with that. I understand Jesse's point of view. He wants to play football. Okay. No one asked for Mason Greenwood to allegedly do what he allegedly did. Okay. He got stood down. Manchester United didn't plan for that. Manchester United, like any other business, will serve its interests first. They had to keep Jesse Lingard because Mason Greenwood suddenly wasn't available. Jesse Lingard failed to allude to that in his interview. At the end of the day, mate, you're a footballer, okay? Now, I get it. That's their job. All right, great. Don't tell me it's the same as every other bricklayer or people who work in aged care facilities or childcare organizations. You get to kick a ball around for a living. Give me a break, pal.
Well, I see that line of thinking and agree with large parts of that, but I think there are also, you bring up an interesting point in regards to the context of that Lingard conversation. Only those two know how that conversation went down, who said what. We've got Murtaugh's side, we've got Jesse Lingard's side. I think the answer's probably in between. I think it's one of those. But in regards to players, and back to my original point, in regards to sort of David Moyes, he's one goal away from getting the sack at West Ham. Here he is, giving his honest sort of reflection of his time at West Ham and sort of all the issues and his time at Manchester United. Jesse Lingard, like, go away from interviews, post-match interviews with Sky Sports or through a club's media. That's one part of a player speaking. But these honest, open podcasts, sort of reveal all podcasts, thoughts on players, because we call for honesty. We call for these players to sort of tell the truth and sort of we want that transparency. But when they actually do it, it's sort of open, oh, shit, should they be really saying that? And I'm just thinking, just your thoughts on players and managers under contract. Cristiano Ronaldo talking to Piers Morgan, doing it while they're under contract.
Yeah, it's a new trend, it seems. I'm all for players being honest. I'm all for coaches being honest. And I think we need to embrace and give these guys a platform to speak their truths. I think we enjoy it. And whether you agree with Jesse Lingard or you don't, it's refreshing to hear the guy speak his feelings, yeah? With David Moyes, the David Moyes one is interesting. I think when you're a coach, there's a different expectation and there's bigger consequences. If you're David Moyes, you're giving your players an excuse not to focus on football. And I think by him doing that interview tells me he kind of sees the writing on the wall. And I don't think it's a very professional thing to do. And if you're a West Ham player right now seeing that interview, why would you go fight for this manager anymore?
Well, it's West Ham against Everton this week, the loser, Lampard or Moyes. One of them's gone. surely.
Oh yeah, it's definitely the Saki derby.
And if you're to put money on it, who do you think loses the job or loses the match, hence loses their job first? Frank Lampard or David Moyes?
Probably ends in a draw.
It has one of those games. It has 0-0 draw written all over it. I definitely won't be tuning into that one, but we will be tuning in. Actually, the Saturday night game here in Sydney.
Everton will get up. I think West Ham are a basket case right now. I mean, they're both basket cases,
Both are.
but I think West Ham are worse.
Well, as we wrap up, sort of looking at Stephen here, he thinks it'll be Frank Lampard. Looking ahead to the Premier League, obviously, unfortunately, Manchester United Arsenal is Monday morning, 3:30 for us here in Sydney. But the Saturday night kickoff for us is 11:30, Larry. Liverpool, Chelsea. Chelsea are a basket case. Liverpool aren't doing much better. Last time out, they got thumped 3-0 away at Brighton. Now, last time we went to Brighton, we got a sort of similar quite feeling. But in terms of Liverpool, they're nothing to shout about at the moment. And I think they're on the verge of a signing. Who they saw? They did sign someone, or they're about to. I forget. But all clubs need investment. But I look at Liverpool's midfield, and that is a shambles. Forget about Fred and McTominay. They're good enough. They're squad players. I look at the makeup of Liverpool's squad in regards to the age in their midfield, the quality, and also the contract situation at Liverpool in regards to their midfield trio or the players who make up that trio. They are a mess. They need huge investment in that midfield. And is Jurgen Klopp the man to be there for the next 3 or 4 years to oversee that? I'm not sure. So Liverpool are going to go through huge change, in my opinion, in the next couple of years. And I think that change is good for other clubs because I don't think they'll be the club that they were.
You know what? I think they're at a real risk of becoming that mediocre team we saw throughout the 2000s, the noughties.
For us, the last 5-6 years.
Yeah, absolutely. I look at their squad. It's an aging squad, isn't it? There's not a lot of young, exuberant players in there. I'm looking at the lineup they put out against Wolves, and look, they managed to get a result. Wolves are struggling, but I'm looking at that team that played Harvey Elliott, Navi Keita. I like Thiago. He's injury prone though. The defense, like James Milner played right back.
But they rely on him a lot. He plays midfield 1 week, left back 1 week, right week the other. Like they rely on James Milner a lot, and a lot of their fans sort of really hate that in regards to. We see that from the outside, thinking, how on earth is he still doing it? Liverpool fans are still, oh my god, this guy's still doing it, and like in a bad way. And look, long may continue, as Sully puts here, long may Liverpool continue to be rubbish. And I think the biggest factor in regards to their sort of next big step backwards is the player who's potentially having, I don't know, maybe someone can provide stats which proves me wrong, but just on perception where I compare it to other teams, their biggest issue or their worst player at the moment is Mohamed Salah.
Yeah. Yeah, he was benched. Look, they played a rotated side, granted, but he was benched, and he's struggling. It's funny, since he signed his new contract, I feel like he just decided he didn't want to play football anymore.
How often does that happen in regards to whatever club? A player has a great season, or obviously fair play to him, had a few good seasons. They have that great season, they get that new bumper contract, and it's standard. When that happens, a player's performance just drops, and I'm just thinking, is that lazy to just think, well, they've made it, and they've got all this money, or is there another coincidence behind it, or? But it happens far too frequently.
Tom, this has been the whole argument when United released this whole, they want to have a wage cap for players. This is why I support it, because players chase money and the brands, and football's gotten too big for these guys to have any motivation to do anything anymore. I mean, with Mo Salah, it's a bit different. I mean, he's won the Champions League. He's won the Premier League. He's Egypt's greatest player. He's Africa's greatest player. I mean, he'll go down in football folklore. His legacy is cemented if he retires tomorrow. I mean, in terms of his status in the game, right? He's not going to become Ronaldo. He's not going to become Messi. He's done all he could possibly do. What more does he have to be driven by?
I see that, and I do take the argument, but I think there you're talking, and I'm on both sides of the fence here, but there you're talking in regards to being rewarded and you get this new contract. Other players who are already on that level of contract, who have obviously were on a previous contract before and sort of ended up on a big contract, some of those players perform. Erling Haaland's performing, Rafael Varane's performing, Cristiano Ronaldo, Lionel Messi perform. The players at Real Madrid, Barcelona, they've always performed on big contracts. And before they got their big contract, they're obviously on lesser deals at some stage. But when there is this drastic, okay, you have a good season, bang, you're our new star, top earner. That seems to me, in my opinion, where the performances drop off.
I think in his case specifically, it was the wrong call. And the reason I say that is because he's now 30, right? And 30, you're not past the peak of your powers or anything like that. But I think to offer him the kind of contract he got that late in his career, like Marcus Rashford probably earns as much as Mo Salah does now. But the point is, Rashford still has the best part of his career to come, unless he, God forbid, he has a major injury or anything like that. He still has the best part of his career to come. His peak years aren't here yet. You paid this guy the biggest contract in Liverpool's history after his peak. And it was always going to have a sad ending. You know what I mean? I understand because they lost Sadio Mane and it was a risky gamble to lose both of those players in one go. But you know what? If you have your time again, Sadio Mane is the one they probably should have picked. I think he's double the footballer Mo Salah is. Mo Salah just finds the back of the net. Now, a lot of people might see that and say I'm an idiot because scoring goals is the most important thing in football. But you know what? Sadio Mane did a lot more for that football team than Mo Salah did. Sorry.
You talk about that sad ending, Larry, and a very sad ending brings me so much joy. And Matt here bringing up a point. Maybe if I was Mo Salah, I'd just be pointing the finger. I'd say, how can I perform with his donkey up front in Darwin Núñez? I think in terms of we talk about Erling Haaland sort of maybe having a detrimental effect to the way Manchester City play. Not much is made of Darwin Núñez. A lot of people are seeing the finishing and everything. He's a shocking footballer. I don't care now. He might go on to score 50 goals at one stage. He doesn't pass my eye test. Darwin Núñez is a donkey.
Oh, yeah. Oh, you know what's hilarious? We had Chelsea sign Lukaku for 100 million last season. I can't believe no one talks about that, by the way.
Yeah, he's still a Chelsea player. He's going to come back into that squad.
Oh, my God. Well, can they fit him in? He's going to be the 40th unveiling next season. So you've got 100 million pound donkey Lukaku. You've got 100 million pound donkey Darwin Núñez. Who's going to be the 100 million pound donkey next season? We got to keep the trend going, surely.
Well, after Weghorst lift the Premier League trophy, I think Weghorst will lift the Premier League trophy, and he can't go into that discussion.
Do you call him a donkey though? I mean, like you know what we mean by donkey. Like
I think
he's a bit of a donkey.
He goes into the category. At the moment, he's in my good graces, but in regards to the makeup of the play, he does fall into that category. Obviously, big strikers do. It's one of those players that their strength is in their nimble footwork, like Lionel Messi or Anthony Martial.
What? Is Zlatan the best big man striker there's ever been? He's got an unbelievable touch. Like his abilities, Zlatan.
He's a player you could see playing he obviously did play for Barcelona, but he's someone you could see in a different body shape playing in the number 6 in a Spanish midfield or something. He's obviously just a crazy player like that. Obviously tremendous ability. And what a fantastic career. I remember when we did sign him on that free transfer when Jose Mourinho came in 2016. Jose Mourinho and Zlatan Ibrahimovic came 2016. And that was for Ibrahimovic one final season. We're in 2023, and he's still kicking around. So I think Zlatan Ibrahimovic's career is something we're going to have to go look back on and just think, wow, what have we witnessed there? But just about to wrap up the Friday Night Pint. Larry, anything else Manchester United related or football you want to discuss before Man United play Arsenal?
No, not really, except there's 20-odd people watching this video. There's 10 likes. Help us out, guys. Come on. Show some love, please, for the Friday Night Pint. If you are new here, the Friday Night Pint is pretty much a bit of structure, but we just waffle on. There's not a whole much to it. Whatever comes to our mind pops up. What'd you have for dinner tonight, Tom?
I had lamb chops, which was nice. Definitely nice.
That yourself?
Don't be silly. The wife's in the kitchen cleaning up.
Can I ask you a question? I don't want to talk about football anymore. Can I ask you? We're nearly at an hour. We got 7 minutes, okay? Let me ask you a question. Dana White slapping Company. Give me your thoughts on that, because I think he might be the most unpopular person on the planet right now. I think he's got to close that company down. He won't do it because the guy loves a buck, but he's got to close that shit down.
Well, you say he loves a buck, and yes, 100%. I think ultimately why this will get shut down is I think this will lose their money. I think this will impact the UFC badly. This is obviously under the UFC umbrella. Forget the irony of the thing of what happened with him 2 or 3 weeks ago and all our correct thoughts in regards to him slapping his wife. That's just ironic in regards to how it's fallen in relation with his power slap. This was in the works of coming out this January a year ago. This was always going to happen. We didn't know that slap was going to happen 2 weeks before the unveiling. It is what it is in regards to that. I'm sure we all have our own correct thoughts in regards to Dana White as a person.
Through that? So what actually happened to the guy, the one that... So does he have brain damage now?
In regards to the power slap, I'm sure everyone has seen on. You just go to Twitter, type in UFC slap. You'll see what we're talking about. And so, I haven't seen what happened in regards. I heard the word brain damage, and I don't know if it was made in a sort of banter sort of context or is it actual being a hospitalization and something has happened. I'm not sure. Everyone knows I'm a big fan of sort of boxing and UFC, and I sort of immerse myself in it. I love it. I watch it as much as the football. I felt sick. I feel sick every time I watch this. It pops up on Twitter and two guys slapping each other. I even saw one where it was two women. I feel physically sick. For this to be sanctioned as a sport, Las Vegas, the Nevada State Athletic Commission have sanctioned it. They've made it a legal sport in Las Vegas, and I just think it should be illegal. I feel physically sick. People are saying, well, they're just slaps. They're not hits. No, it's a hit. If you're not defending, if your face is just still and don't have any defense at all, I feel physically sick. I can't watch it. It just pops up on my Twitter and I do it. But the worst thing is, later on, from what I have read, and I've heard Dana White do interviews and everything, there's going to be a pay-per-view. Now, obviously, no one's going to buy the pay-per-view, so that is where they're going to start losing money and they'll get rid of the power slap in a few months' time. I think that is a good thing. Dana White will say that's an unfortunate thing, but I do look at it and think, I can't get my head around how it's been made legal. Like I say the word, but that is the only feeling I have towards it. I feel physically sick when I hear these slaps connecting because the people just get knocked out on the spot because you can't defend it. There's no defense. It's not a sport.
Why are they opting to do it? Can someone explain that to me?
I've seen it in some of the Eastern European countries, seen it over the years in terms of, I've seen it in like Russia and Ukraine, and they do it and they sort of go viral, and the UFC's picked up on trends. And he's seen a potential market for it where people with sick minds sort of do find this appealing. And look, he's a businessman, but maybe he does see a market for it and the market will end up paying off. I'm not sure. But in terms of my thoughts of it, I don't like it. And there's a big UFC card this Sunday, which I'm very excited for. Give me a bit of a sort of boost before Man United Arsenal. Obviously, Sunday lunchtime, I'll go down to the pub, warm up for the match on Monday morning. But it's shocking. It's not a sport. It's someone's going to die. Unfortunately, that will happen if it continues.
Agree 100%. Like no, I bring it up because obviously it's all over Twitter. I mean, I don't follow UFC religiously. I watch the big cards, but and I just saw it pop up all over my feed, and I saw this guy who was foaming from the mouth after he got smacked.
So the guy with the big hematoma on his cheek.
It's horrific. It's horrific, and you know what? Sometimes. Unfortunately, the way society's gone nowadays, like people will just do outrageous shit for money. And it's just, you got to just take the decision away from people. You got to take the decision away from people.
I think that's the thing. I think the people we see there, they're marketing as fighters. They're not fighters. They're people who need money, and they're obviously found themselves in unfortunate situations where they have to resort to that. You fingers crossed that's never been not the case for most people, but that's unfortunately the situation they do find themselves in. Matt here with a shout. There is a good fight. There's a fourth fight between two flyweights, which I'm definitely looking forward to. But finish on a lighter note, Larry, in regards to these slaps. Box has a question here. If you have a football-related top three to slap, so we'll come back and we'll say we're a fan of the slap. Okay, Jordan Pickford's number one, obviously. Give me your number one.
He won't reach you if he tries to hit you.
Yeah, but that's why. It's not just about hitting him. It's keeping me safe, Larry.
Top three players to power slap. Luis Suarez has to be in there.
Suarez, that's a good shout. I don't mind that.
I know the whole everything. He was such a good footballer, Luis Suarez.
Oh. Well, I said about a week ago, it was 10 years to the day since my last ever trip to Old Trafford. And it was Manchester United Liverpool in Ferguson's last season. We beat them 2-1. Robin Van Persie and Nemanja Vidic scored. I think Daniel Sturridge scored the goal for Liverpool. It was the year after that. It was the year after that, but that same era. That Suarez was on the pitch. And every time Suarez got the ball, I was at the back of the Stretford end. And every time Suarez got the ball, he was 60 metres from goal, back to goal, got the ball in his own half, nowhere near the goal. He had that ability to put all this fear in the fans. I felt it. He got the ball back to goal, 60 metres away. I thought, oh my God, he's going to score here. He had that ability to do something out of nowhere, which would result in a goal. I'm just thinking that fear that he gave us, we're cruising at 2-0. He's down near the corner flag. Geez, he's going to score here. And I think that you do look at that. Obviously, that does bring a sort of special ability. So Suarez definitely on my slap list. So we've got Jordan Pickford, Luis Suarez, Matt with a shout.
John Terry has to be there. John Terry.
Graham Souness. Foxy,
that's a shout. That's a
Jermaine
shout.
Pennant. I think anyone in regards to on TalkSport is in with a bit of a slap in. Martin Keown is a shout. Don't mind that. Carlos Tevez from Stephen. Carlos Tevez, look, I don't like. I'm not defending him.
Jordan, I
actually like. Not warm to Carlos. It's Simon Jordan I like. Chrissy with an obvious shout. Stephen Gerrard definitely always needs one, no doubt there.
Oh yeah.
But
why has no one said John Terry? I would studs
John
up
Terry.
John Terry. Forget the slap. I'm taking a 20-meter run up with some silver studs on.
Just make sure you don't slip either before Gerrard or John Terry. But Jordan Pickford definitely top of my list. But do appreciate all the shit. There are good shouts, and I will definitely
No
line
hate
up.
for Jordan Pickford, I swear.
If Dana White wants to give me a few bucks, I'll happily go and slap one of those people. But
Tom, I got big news out of the WWE. I know you don't really follow WWE. It looks like
going to Saudi Arabia.
Looks like The Rock is on his way back.
Doesn't he do a return every 2 years?
No, he hasn't fought for a good while. It looks like I think he'll main event WrestleMania too. He hasn't fought at WrestleMania in a very long time.
Yeah, no, like The Rock, fair play to him. I've obviously made a hell of a career.
I think whether you're a wrestling fan or not, I think everyone as a kid, if you're a male and you're a kid, you watch WWE. And if The Rock comes back, you bet I'll be tuning in for that. Matt wants to slap. You know what, Tom? If there's one person I don't want to be slapped from, it is Matt Labita. He is
it's an unpopular opinion. I think a lot of people would say that's potentially a popular opinion, but I agree it's unpopular for me. But
I wouldn't want to slap Ronaldo.
Carragher, I just wouldn't want him to spit back at me after I connect.
Can I be honest? You might not like this one, Tom. Roy Keane, when he gets into his really whiny, moony. I know you love Roy Keane. Do you remember
I'll pay for that pay-per-view. I'll pay for the pay-per-view. Larry Taylor versus Roy Keane in a slap-off.
Oh, my God. I would run. But the argument he was having with Gary Neville that one time about Ronaldo, and he's like, he gets all squealy and he starts talking nonsense. Oh, I'd never slap Roy Keane, obviously, but quite frustrating.
Well, obviously, he slapped Peter Schmeichel. Schmeichel slapped him, then it turned into a bit of a fight, which Bobby Charlton had to get involved, obviously, at a hotel one pre-season. But
here's one time. Let me ask you this: if you had to slap a former United player, one former United player, who would it be?
Stephen brings up Carlos Tevez a little bit earlier. I'm kind of not warm into Carlos Tevez, but he's not as hated in my books as more information has come to light in regards to Carlos Tevez' exit from Man United. But Tevez would potentially be near the top of the list. Other than that, I don't know. There is a player that springs to mind who I'm definitely missing, who should be first on my list, but he slipped my mind. Maybe he'll be first on your list. There should be a player. There's a player who went to a rivalry. Di Maria's got to be. Yeah, well, Di Maria, and I think he's an easy target. I back myself on a fight against Di Maria, so I'll take the easy way out, and I'll slap him.
We got to find another option. There has to be someone else, someone who's not quite pansy.
Well, Eric Bay's got a 7-match ban. I wasn't the biggest fan of Eric Bay. 7-match ban for that kung fu kick. He's not allowed to kick.
You did not like Eric Bay, did you? Jeez.
I liked what he brought. I liked that he looked like a good person. He looked like a good character as a defender. I thought he's a nightmare waiting to happen.
You know what? I'd slap Jesse Lingard. Found it.
No.
Yeah. He's annoying.
You can give me back. I got you a signed photo of Jesse Lingard really rocking whatever they think.
Pogba. I think Pogba's the one.
No, but Pogba could hit me back. I back Pogba in a fight. So, I wouldn't fancy myself with Paul Pogba. But until then, Lukaku's a shout here. But, I wouldn't want to get into a scrap with Lukaku.
He'll whack you with his cock alone.
He's got a bit of size on me, so I'll stay clear of that one. But, look, it has been a good chat. A little off the rails at the end, though, but I do enjoy that. Do appreciate everyone's comments in the live chat. Plenty of interaction. If you are happy or excited for the weekend ahead, please do leave a like on the video. If you are new and you like that bit of a chat, please do hit that subscribe button on our way to 1,500 subscribers. It'd be great to reach that in the next couple of weeks. And Larry, Monday morning, I'll chat to you then.
Indeed.
Set the alarm. Until then, cheers. Have a good one. A good weekend, everyone. Have a good one. Bye.